I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. We got a closed door back there? Okay, good. Mr. Ayala, Ryan Ayala, is from New Orleans. Nolans. Nice. I went to school near Louisville. It took me like 5 years to say Louisville. So Nolans is going to take me a little longer. So he came out to Arizona when he was younger and went to Westview High School. Felt the Lord calling him to seminary. Went off to Notre Dame, a seminary there, the Holy Cross Fathers for a couple of years. And then discerned the Lord had other plans for him. Got a degree in philosophy and theology. Just has a beautiful mind and love for the church. Took a job in West Phoenix at OLPH in Glendale. And along the way, met his wife. And has been married now for 3.5 years. And they have a beautiful son, Liam, running around. But please help me welcome Ryan Ayala. Right now he works at St. Mary's High School. Come on up. He's a basketball coach too.
Yeah. So I'm the basketball coach as my assistant right there in the back, Chris Martinez, for the seminarians, the Diocese of Phoenix. So we're currently 1-2 right now. So we don't have a really good record. But Father Dan Keneally used to be on our team, but then he got ordained, and he's been mopping us up every single year. So I love basketball. It's one of my favorite sports. Let's begin in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. A reading from Proverbs. A wise man is mightier than a strong man, and a man of knowledge than he who has strength. For by wise guidance you can wage your war. In abundance of counselors there is victory. One more time. A wise man is mightier than a strong man, and a man of knowledge than he who has strength. For by wise guidance you can judge your war, and in abundance of counselors there is victory. Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Saint Joseph,
pray for us.
Saint Jose Maria Escriva,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So thank you, Father, for that introduction. Yeah, so as Father said, I just recently married, about 3.5 years. I have a little guy who was running around earlier, so my wife took him back to put him down. So I'm really blessed to be here. I love NNU Newman Center. I think you guys have the best Newman Center in Arizona, West. I mean, it's just amazing what's going on here. So I'm really blessed to be here. So I was thinking about this talk. I just want to add a little disclaimer, and I hate disclaimers. But I am not an expert in this subject. Just as we were driving up here, there was a vehicle fire on the side of the road, and I was losing my mind. I lost all patience. I was like, all right, this is the day. I went to confession earlier this morning. I prepared for this talk. I had a really good rosary time with my wife, and then I was stuck in traffic for about 2 hours, and I completely lost my mind. And so I just want to let you know, I am not an expert here. I'm totally just giving you just sort of a raw perspective of 3 years into marriage and what prepared me for marriage, okay? So that's my little disclaimer. So I was thinking about movies. And I was thinking about my top 5 favorite movies. My first favorite movie is Gone Baby Gone. Who here has seen that movie? Dang, okay, Gone Baby Gone. It's with Casey Affleck and Morgan Freeman. Yeah, it's not really all that popular. It's one of my favorite movies, though. Second, A Bronx Tale.
Classic.
Okay, all right, we're getting there. 3 is there's Denzel Washington, but there's 3 movies associated. So I can't do the hierarchy thing with Denzel. So, Man on Fire. Okay. Remember the Titans. Yeah. Okay, good. And John Q. Yeah. All right, a little bit. Okay, all right. My fourth list, American History X. Okay. It's a pretty depressing movie. All right, my fifth movie. This is really embarrassing. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm embarrassed. But when I told Father Matt this, he also really enjoyed this movie. So I was like, all right, man points. My favorite top 5, last round, Titanic. Yeah. Okay, all right. So there's all right. So Titanic is, I don't know what it is. And let's be honest, like the best scene of Titanic is like the sinking of the ship. It's kind of messed up, but it's pretty legit scene. Like I love Titanic so much. Just recently, my wife and I went to Missouri to visit her family, and there's a Titanic museum. This is a little tangent that has nothing to do with the talk. But this Titanic museum was amazing. Basically, like there was like a little fountain there where you can put your hand in the water to see the temperature of the night that the Titanic, sank, and it was pretty awesome. You can go out to the balcony and they mimic the exact temperature that night. Fun fact: apart from people drowning and dying because of hypothermia, the majority of people died because when they jumped off the boat, hit the propellers, and went down, hit the water, their life jacket actually raised up and snapped their neck in half. I was like, whoa! And it makes sense though. If you're jumping from hundreds of feet down and you hit that water, boom, your neck snaps. So anyways, I was super fascinated about this. It was a priest. The reason why we have pictures nowadays is because there was a priest on board that was taking pictures of Titanic. So it was a fantastic time. So I love Titanic. I just recently read this interview about. You guys remember the scene? If you guys have seen Titanic, there's a scene towards the end, or actually when the ship is sinking, when you see men and women swimming to the boats. Okay, and so I was just reading this interview the other day of this journalist who asked the producer. He said, "Why did you include that?" Because the moral code at that time was that men would go down with the ship. That was the moral code. Like that's where you find your honor. And the reason and how they found out was they found out there were 2 or 3 men who dressed up as women just to try to get on the boat. Okay, so that was the moral code. And the producer responded by saying, "Yeah, we knew that. We knew that was the moral code of the time. Men go down with the boat." But then he said, if we would have left that scene, if we would have depicted that truth in that movie, no one would have believed it. No one would have believed in our modern culture that there was a time when men would go down with the ship and put their wives and children first. So that's why they included men and women going together. Growing up, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have gone down with the ship. I come from I love my dad. A little backstory about my dad. He's from Nicaragua, so that's Central America. He's from Nicaragua, Central America, and he grew up, poor kid. He was a revolutionary, and I actually found this out about 5 years ago when I went back down to Nicaragua with him, and he told me about his story. But crazy story. Basically, he was a revolutionary. He got kicked out of the country because he fought against the Sandinistas at the time, which took over the government. He was blacklisted, and so he moved to New Orleans. Worked 3 jobs, 100+ hours, just to provide for my family. I love my dad. When I think about my memory with him, I think about him getting fireworks for us, and for 4th of July, that was a big thing, or getting the presents that we want. And so my dad, I love my dad. I want to honor him. But also, if I'm going to be objective, and look at my dad for who he really was and is, he never really taught me how to pursue a woman or love a woman. And usually we learn how to treat a woman first through how we see our dads or our closest male figure, adult male figure, how we see them treat your mother, my mom. And so I never noticed affection. I've never heard "I love you." I never heard "I'm sorry." I've never seen them bring roses or flowers home. I've never seen any of that. And so that impacted me a lot. I didn't realize that until I got married, how much that impacted me. And so as I was thinking about this talk and just kind of like, all right, if I'm going to be real, I got to be real and say, look, I wouldn't have gone down with the boat. I probably would have jumped ship. And so here's where I like to start off with, is that if we're going to learn how to be right for Mrs. Right, then we have to understand a very important truth, and that's the dignity of the woman. Now, one can say, well, yeah, that's my dad. You know, my dad, that wasn't his love language. That's not how he expresses his love. However, here's a fact. I don't think he honored my mother the way he should have because he didn't understand the dignity of my mother. I'm being very merciful. Like, I love my dad. I'm just trying to be objective. And so that's where I want to start. If we are going to understand how to prepare for Mrs. Right, I think the first thing we have to realize and remember that she is a daughter of God. Like, she is a princess in God's castle. She was made in the image and likeness of God. She has inherent dignity. There's nothing you or me can do or anyone can say to erase that dignity that was given to her. And so there's this beautiful scripture verse that St. Peter says to kind of drive home this point. He says in 1 Peter, "Let not yours be the outward adorning with braiding hair, decoration of gold, and wearing robes, but let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable jewel of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious." So we hear St. Peter saying, look, you lady, you are very precious in the image and in the image and likeness of God. And so I want to start off with that first fact, that women have an inherent dignity and that they were made in the image and likeness of God. They are God's daughters, okay? The second thing is that she's a bride. And the best, she was made for communion. And so one of the best illustrations I can kind of draw up was the day that I married my wife, our wedding day, and she processed down the aisle with her dad, and I'm sitting there nervous, praying that I don't faint, pass out. Hopefully my best man catches me, all this sort of stuff. So she comes down the aisle, and as you know, traditional tradition is to uplift the veil when they're presented to the soon-to-be husband. So her dad presents her to me, and I lift up her veil. And I just remember seeing for the first time, really, that this person was made for me. I don't want to sound too providentialistic, but she was made for me. By the way, that's one of the ends of marriages that we don't typically talk about. We talk about the ends of marriages, the goal of marriage. We talk about procreation, pro-unitive. But the third thing that people tend to forget is that there's a third end, and that's mutual help. She exists. I exist. We said yes to this covenant of marriage because we're basically saying to each other, help me. I need your help. I need your help to get to heaven. There's something beautiful, by the way, about the veil. This is sort of a side note, but it kind of illustrates the point. Whenever we unveil something, it provokes and it shows, it illustrates a beautiful truth. So I'm a big liturgy guy. I love the Mass. I did my thesis on the Mass when I was in school. And do you guys have chalice veils here? Chalice veils? No. Okay. So so sometimes when in Mass, there's a chalice, right? And this is on the preparation table. There's a chalice, and then there's a paten, and sometimes there's a veil. Did you guys ever see those before? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting fact. That's a very beautiful symbolic thing that happens in the Mass when the priest actually unveils that chalice and that paten. That is supposed to symbolize the moment when the soldiers ripped off Jesus's clothes, and so the priest unveils this chalice. He takes this chalice, he takes the paten, and he moves over to the altar to prepare what? The sacrifice. So the priest offers the holy sacrifice, right? He offers it to the Father. Mass is over, you receive communion. If you notice, the priest sometimes, well, typically goes back to the preparation table, and he puts the veil back on. That's also symbolic, because after the crucifixion, what happens? The resurrection. So Jesus was stripped from his glory, and now he's clothed back again with glory, and even more. And so, I was just thinking about this idea of unveiling. When I lifted up my wife's veil, what I saw was a woman completely unveiled in glory. Someone so beautiful, someone so precious in the eyes of God. And she was made to help me. So that's the second thing to remember, that she is a bride. Lastly, the third important element to understand when it comes to being to the woman is that she is a mother. Not all women are called to be like physical mothers, but all women are called to have the spiritual motherhood about them. JP2, in his encyclical on the dignity and vocation of women, said this. He said that every woman is called to spiritual motherhood. And it means nurturing the emotional, moral, cultural, and spiritual life of others. A friend sent me this study a few weeks ago of this this test back in England where basically they took 9 males and 9 females. 5 of the males were fathers, 4 were single. 9 of the females were mothers, 4 were single. And so what they did, they wanted to conduct a study of how the difference between men and women and how they respond when a baby is crying. So what they discovered was that when a baby is crying, like men, how we respond, and this is true because I know it's in my own life. When men respond to a baby's cry, what do you think is the first reaction? What do you think we're trying to do?
Get him to stop crying.
Yeah, get him to stop crying. So what do? Like we go in there, and it also provokes a sense of not anger, but a sense of urgency. I love my dad. When I think about like my memory with him, like I think about like him like getting fireworks for us, and for 4th of July, that was a big thing, or getting the presents that we want. And so my dad, I love my dad. I want to honor him, but also if I'm going to be objective. If I'm going to be objective and look at my dad for who he really was and is, he never really taught me how to like pursue a woman or love a woman. And usually we learn how to treat a woman first through how we see our dads or like our closest male figure, adult male figure, how we see them treat like your mother, my mom. So she breastfeeds my son, and like it's so weird, like she would be in my room, like we'd be sleeping in bed, my son would be sleeping in the room across the hall, and he would cry, and like me, like I'm just like, oh, come on now, let's go, it's 2 a.m. in the morning, let's fix this, let's go, let's get you down. But her, like she would be like, oh my gosh, like he's crying, and then like naturally, she starts like leaking, her breast starts leaking milk. Her body already knows that it's meant to give to her son. It's such a beautiful, biological thing that happens. And so that's the third thing, is that motherhood, is that women have inherent dignity, they're brides, and that they're all mothers. Okay, now that we understand that a woman has these beautiful spiritual attributes, how do we prepare for that? How do we as men prepare to honor and uplift the women who come into our lives? Just a quick little theological fact. When you and I were baptized, we became adopted sons of God. And when you and I were baptized, we participate in his life in 3 very distinct ways, but I only want to talk about one. But quickly, his kingship. So you and I are called to bring others to Christ into communion with him. Prophet, so you guys are called to evangelize, to bring the word of God to others. And we also share in his priestly ministry. That's the one I want to talk about today. You and I, all of us, when we're baptized, we were given the authority to share in the common priesthood of Jesus. Now, so we're all priests? Yes. There are some priests, ordained priests, like Father Bat and Father Dan, who who have a specific authority, been given authority to hear confession, to say mass. Yes, but all of us, we've also been called to offer a sacrifice. We've also been called to mimic our life after Jesus Christ on the cross. Okay, and so I just kind of want to stick with that image, because if this is true, then how do we sacrifice for a woman? How do we give our lives completely away to a woman? Reading about the story of the Las Vegas shooting that just happened recently, and you guys heard about that guy who like died for his wife. Like here he is, this guy is shooting everyone up, but he like rolls over her and like takes the bullet for her. Right? That's the kind of love that I'm talking about. That's the kind of sacrificial love that I'm talking about. Bishop Olmsted, in his Into the Breach Apostolic Exhortation, he says something like very striking. This line just kind of gets to me every time. He says this. This is our shepherd talking to us. He says, "Those who arrive at the judgment seat of God after this life, without the scars of a sacrificing husband, will hold," quoting Shakespeare at this point, "will hold their manhoods cheap, whilst any speak who fought with us." Again, those who arrive at the judgment seat of God after this life, without the scars of a sacrificing husband, will hold their manhoods cheap, whilst any who speaks fought with us. What do you think he's saying there? He's saying, look, if you try to go into heaven wearing slippers, you're gonna face judgment, right? You're gonna face like the ultimate judgment. Men, we've been called to go present to our Lord when we die with scars, that we've sacrificed ourselves for the women in our life who've been presented in our life. Okay, so why does all this matter? Why does the dignity of the woman matter, and why does us as men being called to sacrifice our lives for these women matter? Because nothing is more attractive to a woman than a sacrificing man. Nothing attracts a woman more than a man who offers his life for her. Nothing attracts a woman more than someone who upholds her dignity. This is why, like, we always stress manners, right, and like polite gestures. This is why we always stress, holding the door open for her. This is why we stress offering to carry something heavy. This is why we stress, walk closer to the traffic, offer your umbrella, pay attention to how you dress and how you smell. This is why we talk about these things, because it's not just like social constructs, because they're not social constructs. They're meant because they uphold the dignity of the woman. They help rise and elevate the dignity of the woman. So, here are a few tips on how I think we can prepare ourselves and how we can help uplift women. And especially, let's say there's like a girl in your life. Begin with a season of friendship. I can't stress this enough. Sometimes I see like guys and girls like run into this relationship. Like sometimes God asks you and wants you to just be in friendship with them. So what does that mean? That means, if the boys are, if your boys and your friends are all going out, tomorrow, like I'm going out to Arizona, check it out, show my son Arizona, or like Flagstaff Extreme. Yeah, right. So, Flagstaff. I only got to the third video, of course.
We'll get you up there next time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Come and ask me.
All right. Flagstaff Extreme, instead of just like, initially saying, hey, do you want to just go, you and I, to Flagstaff Extreme and just try this out? That's good, but sometimes it might just be best just to start off a friendship. Hey, Miguel. Hey, Chris. Hey, Father. Do you guys want to come with all of us? Let's all go together to Flagstaff Extreme. Let's all go together to Arizona. And so that's another thing. Begin with a season of friendship. In friendship, you get to allow yourself, you give yourself permission to get to know each other without rushing into a romantic relationship. Do you ever know guys? I'm sure you guys know someone who's like, they started dating someone or started seeing someone, and then all of a sudden you don't hear from them again. You guys know anyone like that? Like, where you been at, bro? Yeah. Well. Who's that? Is he in this room?
Just kidding. We love you, buddy.
Called you out.
So much. Yeah. So
Dang.
so allow yourself to begin in a season of friendship, so that we don't avoid just like completely rushing into this and being taken over by her attractiveness. Okay. Here's number two. Make commitment clear. We call this DTR, like define the relationship. Women love men who are clear, and I am so bad at this. Women love men who are clear, and so initiate. When you say, "Hey, Jasmine, do you want to go to a restaurant?" Have a restaurant in mind already.
Yeah.
There's nothing there's nothing more less attractive than unattractive than saying, "Hey, so where do you want to go?" Girls don't respond to that. They don't like that. They like men who take initiative. So figure out if you need to call oregano's in advance. Call oregano's, but initiate and have the restaurant plan. Okay. Another thing about plans and restaurants and stuff, feel free to be creative about your date and where you go. When I was in college, I was broke. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have time to go to Oregano's. I didn't have money to go to Oregano's and take her there. However, when I met my wife, she's an avid coffee drinker, so I started to pick up what sort of coffee she likes. She likes dark roast black, and so I started to pick that up. I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and hit up a coffee shop. And then I would order for her, so it lets her know that I've been paying attention to her. So you don't have to think of super high end, super tons of money. Think simple. G.K. Chesterton called it the thrift of romance. The thrift of romance. My wife and I were broke now, and so instead of going on fancy dates, when my son goes to sleep, sometimes we just go to the patio, bring out wine, and play Scrabble or Bananagrams, or sometimes we just watch Netflix and so sometimes we just Netflix and just shit like that. So when I was in college, can I also say this too? Don't be the weird Catholic dude. Can I be human. I don't know. Don't. Your first date doesn't have to be adoration. Don't
try to evangelize her.
During the Our Father, you don't have to stand by her to hold her hand. Just kind of give her a little space. Confession doesn't have to be the first date. Maybe the second date. When I was in college, talking about creativity, something I did, and I'm really proud of it because I thought about it myself. But one of the things I did for my wife. So at the university, there's a beautiful Gothic basilica. It's super beautiful. And so the week before, I had the tour guide train me and teach me his tour and the art and all that stuff. And so I spent the week just learning about the images, the history of the images, the Stations of the Cross, the stained glass windows, the altar, all of this stuff. And so one day, because I'm broke, because I couldn't actually afford anything, so I was like, all right. So I invited my wife. I said, "Hey, do you want to go on a date?" And so I told her to get ready. She got really fancy, and she thought we were going to a restaurant. But I actually took her to this church, and I gave her the tour. It was about a 2-hour tour, and she was blown away by it. She was so in love with the fact that I took time out of my day, and I was very intentional. I was creative. And then we went over to my house, and I made her dinner. So be creative. Don't be afraid to be creative. Women love that stuff. Okay, number 3. Be specific. Oh my goodness, be specific. So, women. Oh man, I tell my wife this all the time. Women make the mistake, and those of you guys who are in relationships now, you guys know. Women make the mistake of assuming that we know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Amen. Women make the mistake that I don't know what you're thinking. And so my wife and I, after 3 years, she's kind of been coaching me, helping me, okay, Ryan, this is what you do. The other day, she texted me. She was like, okay, can you stop by Trader Joe's, get me chocolate chip ice cream, and the roses and red colored roses. She was very clear. Yeah, I will do that. But she can't assume that I know what I need to do that. So be very, very specific. And I know it's hard for guys. Like, it's hard to like initiate and like be very specific. But I encourage you to be specific. Number 4, be interested in the things she enjoys. Okay, that doesn't mean you have to like it, but be interested in it. She's into like Grey's Anatomy and New Girl and all this stuff on Netflix. I can't stand that stuff. Like that stuff is so lame. I'd rather watch like football or like the Cardinals or I don't know, like football, baseball or something. But I'm interested in it. And sometimes I ask her, like, "Hey, why do you like that? Why do you like the show? I just I'm curious to know." And so she tells me, and it's really lame excuse, but I'm still like, okay, but because she enjoys it, I'm interested in learning about it. Okay, because she enjoys it, I'm interested in learning about it. Number 5, cutting down time here. Learn her love language. You guys familiar with the love languages at all? Dr. Chapman, who's a therapist, created these 5 love languages for the man. Again, this is part of being intentional. Number 1. So basically, you and I, we all receive love differently. Okay, so he says people receive love in either one of these 5 ways. Number 1, words of affirmation. These people, they need to hear words. That's how they receive love. Okay. Number 2, acts of service. For these people, actions speak louder than words. Number 3, receiving gifts. For some people, what makes them feel most loved is to receive a gift. 4, quality time. So spending quality time with the other person. Number 5, physical touch. Not necessarily like sexual, but like, you know, just kind of like affirmation touches, and yeah, exactly like that, like the pounds. This is really important. This has been really huge for my relationship because for me, how I receive love is through quality time and acts of service. For her, how she receives love is acts of service and receiving gifts. So in other words, I can tell her, and I do, like 20 times a day that she's beautiful. But like honestly, that's not the primary way in which she receives affection. She appreciates it, but she'd much rather get like a Dutch Bros thing, you know, like something from AJ's, or like an iced tea or a coffee, because that's how she receives it. So this is a really good trick. Learn her love language. Okay, number 6. Oh, can I also say this about this love language thing? This is really bad because this is being recorded, but the game has never been easier. Let me tell you why. The game has never been easier. Let me tell you why.
Zoom in on his face. Oh, it is. It's,
When I every Christmas, every year for her birthday, I don't know what to get her. However, I have access to her Pinterest board. She doesn't know that. Right, she doesn't know that, but I have access to her Pinterest board. Now she does. And I also have access to her Instagram. So I know who she follows. I know what weird mommy blog she's following. Some creative person she's following. And so honestly, sometimes what I do, I just go around, look at her Pinterest, see what she's liking, and I'm like, all right, I'm formulating ideas to give her something for Christmas or for her birthday. So, yeah, don't be like super stalkerish about it, but like take advantage of it. It's pretty cool. Okay, number 6, be intentional about how you spend time with her. I see this all the time when I worked at Notre Dame and I was a campus minister there. I see this all the time with guys, especially. And my wife tells me this story all the time. When she was dating this guy in college, and he would invite her over, and he would be playing video games the whole time, and she would just be sitting on the side. And nothing communicated to her like, I don't care about you, than that. The guy's thinking like nothing of it. He's playing video games, playing Call of Duty, but he's completely ignoring the girl that he's attracted to. What do you think that communicates? So be intentional about how you spend time with her. Even at night, like sometimes, again, I noticed this a lot on the college campus. Sometimes you invite her over maybe to do homework, but for some of you guys, like for me, like when I'm tired, that's one way where the devil will always try to throw in a little jab. And so, and you guys know how it is. Like you're tired, you guys are both studying, and then just one thing leads to another. Be intentional about it. If you know that's your weak spot, maybe look for another time when you can spend time with her. Okay, so be intentional about how you spend time with her. It's huge. Okay, I'm almost there. Guard your heart, but not too much. I can't stand the sort of guard your heart movement that I'm seeing a lot in Christian circles. Because yes, there is some truth that we should guard our heart, especially from things that lead us to sin. That's true. We should guard our heart, especially from impure things. But if I guarded my heart, I would have never gotten married. Here's what C.S. Lewis says about this. He says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your own selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. And so, guard your heart, but not too much. Know that when you find that person, you're going to be asked to be vulnerable. Love hurts. And so love is going to demand a painful sting at times. I'm learning this now, and I'm speaking in solidarity, that half the battle in marriages, to be honest with you, is like getting over myself, me the man, myself. I work at St. Mary's, I also work at St. Thomas the Apostle, and I also do some part-time stuff at the Institute downtown and teach some classes. I'm tired, dude. Like, I work 10 hours a day, 11 hours a day. When I get home, I just want to and I'm an introvert. So when I get home, I don't want to talk. I just want to go home to lay on my couch and just relax. But honestly, when I get home, that's when the real work begins. That's when the full-time work actually begins. I had this great married friend. He told me that always assume that your wife has had a worse day than you had before going into the home. And that's true. And so it sucks. I hate denying myself all that stuff. I want to just chill, but I have to clean the dishes. I have to give my son a bath. I have to change his diaper. I mean, I love doing that, but sometimes it sucks. So know that love hurts. Love is going to demand vulnerability. A few last things. Learn and practice your faith. You guys are already here, so praise God. Be pure. And then the last advice I have for you, find other men. Here's a reality. No one can teach you how to be a man than other men. Women can allow that space to happen. Women can allow can foster that. But no one can teach you how to be a man like other men. I'm so blessed to have, my best friend, Chris, back there, a married man, to be surrounded by holy priests who take their fatherhood seriously. To have other married men who I can just kind of talk to about some of the day-to-day struggles. They help me become a better man. So find other men to go into battle with you. It's so important. The Into the Breach document, I don't know if you guys read it, but Bishop Olmsted gave that to us, you and I, his faithful, his sons. And so at my school at St. Mary's, I took a bunch of high school guys, and we meet every Thursday to go over to that Into the Breach document. And it's been so great. He speaks in our language. He speaks in a way that we can understand. So if you guys want to do that with other guys, feel free to do that. It's a very powerful book. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary.
Full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Saint Joseph,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Ryan. You guys know the theme we've kind of been going for this year is finding brothers to walk with, finding our Peter, James, and John. Who are we going to walk with, like he said? And so what I'd like to do is kind of break up now, and just there's no set questions or anything, but just kind of process and share what struck you, and where's the Lord speaking and moving us. And so what I'd like to do, who has a men's group? Who has a?
I'm actually going to be starting one. I have people inviting over tonight if they'd like to come over.
Okay. So let's see the easy way to do this. If you have a men's group, why don't you go ahead and stand up so you can kind of just. Okay. And if your men's group is already here tonight, why don't you go ahead and gravitate towards that? But why don't you guys just say your year, whatever, real quick. Your
Senior plus, I guess.
Senior plus, married
Plus.
senior, missionary. Dominic,
I'm with Pete.
your feet.
What are we saying?
Junior.
Oh, junior, yeah.
Junior.
Fifth year.
You see these guys? Find a guy. Find a guy, and we're going to take about 10, 15 minutes and just kind of, you can turn the chairs, just kind of process what we just heard. It's a chance to kind of just process that. Sound good? Ready? Break.